Good morning, boys and girls. I'm Eleanor Hawkins, and welcome to Telestory Time. You know, fall is almost here, and this is a very good time for you to remind your parents about a bedtime story hour. You know, some of you are learning to read, and it's a very good time for you to practice reading to your parents and then ask them to read one to you. And some of you boys and girls who can read very well can read a chapter of a book to your parents and then have them read the next chapter. Yes, at bedtime is a very good time to have a family reading time together, and I hope you'll plan one for tonight. And now it's time for me to read to you this morning, and our very first story is entitled The Fraidy Cat Kitten. One day, three little kittens started out for a walk in the woods. "I'll go first," said Big Tom, "because I'm not afraid of anything." "And I'll go next," said Tabby, "because I am very brave too." "Fraidy Cat can follow us because he's afraid of everything," Big Tom and Tabby said together. They went along the path and over the bridge and through the orchard and into the woods. Oh, it was cool in the woods. Birds sang in the trees and flowers grew in little patches among the moss. Suddenly, there was a buzzing sound, a loud buzzing sound like a dragon, cried Big Tom. Big Tom and Tabby were too frightened to even move. "Now, what do you suppose a dragon looks like?" asked Fraidy Cat. He crept closer and closer to the buzzing sound. He peeped around a fern, and there was a big fat bumblebee sound asleep in a flower, snoring very loudly. Of course, we knew all the time it wasn't really anything to be afraid of, said Big Tom and Tabby. "Now just follow us, Fraidy Cat," they said. So Big Tom and Tabby and Fraidy Cat went along the path in the woods. Suddenly they heard a bumping, thumping noise under the ground. Thump, bump, thump, bump, thump, bump, just like an earthquake, cried Tabby, and she held tightly to Big Tom. "I wonder what an earthquake will be like," said Fraidy Cat. So he watched and waited and waited, and after a little while the bumping and thumping noise stopped, and there a little mole popped his head out of the ground. "Oh, of course," said Big Tom and Tabby. "We knew all the time it was just a mole digging his tunnel." So Big Tom and Tabby and Fraidy Cat walked a little farther into the woods. Suddenly, they heard a tiny squeaky sound like a pixie, cried Big Tom and Tabby, and away they ran out of the woods and straight home. They were so frightened that they hid under the bed. "Oh, well, I'd like to meet a pixie," said Fraidy Cat. He crept a little closer to the tiny squeaky sound and peeped through a hole in the tall grass. And what do you think he saw? Well, he saw four little mice playing tiddlywinks. Fraidy Cat laughed and laughed and laughed, and then he walked bravely home. And Big Tom and Tabby never called him Fraidy Cat again. And that, boys and girls, is the story of the Fraidy Cat Kitten. And now stay tuned, and we'll be back in just a moment to show you books from the shelves of your public library. Boys and girls, you know that fall officially arrives next week. And I brought along some books about the seasons and about trees. The very first one I want to show you is entitled Four Seasons for Little People. And inside we have a whole chapter, or really a whole story, on autumn and all of its beautiful, beautiful colors. Yes, this is the story of Four Seasons for Little People. Our next book is entitled Trees, a Guide to Familiar American Trees. And inside we have very, very good illustrations identifying our different trees. And all the way through you can look at the pictures and identify the trees that you have in your yard if you don't know their names. Yes, this is the book entitled Trees, a Guide to Familiar American Trees. Our next book is Out of Doors in Autumn. And boys and girls, this is an excellent book because inside it shows us all the things that happen in the fall. And it tells us all about the changes that fall brings in nature. And you know, it tells us here in this chapter, plant life prepares for winter. And this tells us all of these different things. And this is the book entitled Out of Doors in Autumn. Our next book is entitled Trees. And just look at the beautiful foliage on this tree. Yes, our leaves will be turning all beautiful colors very soon. And inside you can see that this is a book that we can identify with our trees that are in our yards and in our woods. And here it tells us all about changing colors. The leaves of some trees change from green to fantastic shades of yellow, orange, and brown. And we always look forward to this beautiful time. And here it tells us all about collecting leaves. I always collect leaves, the beautiful colored leaves, every year. And this tells us how to preserve them. Yes, this is the book entitled Trees. And you know, autumn is a wonderful time to walk in the woods. And that is just the title of this book, A Walk in the Woods. And this is a very large book, and inside it has very good photographs of the things that happen in the fall and that you can see when you have a walk in the woods. Our next book has a beautiful maple tree on the front, and this book is entitled Backyard Trees. And you can see that this tree is in its glory, all in shades of gold. And inside you can see backyard trees. It tells about our tallest trees, and it tells us about all the different trees that we have in our yards. Yes, we have lots of sycamores, and over, as you can see, we have the green ash and the black walnut. Yes, these are trees we are familiar with in this book, Backyard Trees. And our last book is entitled What Happens in the Autumn. And boys and girls, this book is a brand new one in the Craven-Pamlico Carteret Regional Library System, and you see it has very beautiful colored illustrations. And would you look at that photograph? All the beautiful colored leaves of big, big mountainside of beautiful trees. And then all the way through, we have just beautiful, beautiful pictures. And it tells us all the things that happen in the autumn. Yes, this is the book, What Happens in the Autumn. Boys and girls, any of these books can be checked out from any of the libraries in the Craven-Pamlico Carteret Regional Library System. Be sure and visit your library sometime during this next week and check out some very good books. And now stay tuned, and we'll be back in just a moment with another story just for you. Now, boys and girls, I'm going to read you the story of Johnny Appleseed. And right here at the beginning of the story, this is what it says. John Chapman was a man who lived in the East when pioneers first began to move west. He lived on a farm that had many apple trees. When he saw pioneers moving westward, he wanted them to have apple trees too. So he set out by himself to plant apple trees in the wilderness. In time, everyone called him Johnny Appleseed. And now this is his story. Johnny Appleseed stood under his apple trees. He waved to the children in the wagons going west. Goodbye, goodbye. Eat the apples I gave you. Save the seeds. Plant them near your new homes. Maybe they will grow into trees. Oh, the children waved back at Johnny. Oh, thank you, Johnny Appleseed, they all called. When the last wagon was out of sight, Johnny talked to his dog. It is sad that there are no apple trees for people in the new lands of the West. I love apples. All the children love them too. I know how to make trees grow. I will go into the new lands and plant trees for everyone. So Johnny Appleseed took tools for planting. He took a big bag of apple seeds. He took his Bible. He put a cooking pot on his head for a cap, and off he went into the wilderness. As he walked along, he sang, I'm an apple seed planter. I want all to know the taste of apples wherever I go. Apples for eating, apples for pies, apples for health and sparkling eyes. Over the hills, into the valleys, across the rivers went Johnny Appleseed. Into the wilderness he went. Wherever there was new land for new homes, he went. The wild animals looked at Johnny. He smiled at them. Come closer, friends, said Johnny. I will not hurt you. I have no gun. I love all living things. The birds sang for Johnny. The animals followed him. They stayed near when he lay down to sleep. Sometimes Johnny Appleseed met Indians in the woods. All men are brothers, said Johnny. Come and share my supper. Sit by my fire and rest. If they were hurt, he helped them. Oh, we are friends, said the Indians. Sometimes Johnny rode with the Indians in their canoes. Johnny Appleseed dug up patches of ground and planted apple seeds wherever he traveled. Grow well, little black seeds, he said. Many children are going to live in this land. They need apples to eat and apple trees to climb. Grow well. After the apple seeds were planted, Johnny moved on. The rains fell on the little black seeds. The sunshine warmed them. The seeds sent up tiny shoots. In the winter, snow lay over the shoots. When spring came, Johnny Appleseed came back to his plantings. Hi-ho, he said, good little trees have grown from the seeds. He dug them up carefully and carried them to the settlers in their new homes. Apple trees, he called to all the children who ran to meet him. Apple trees to plant near your new cabin. The children were happy to see Johnny. They showed him their pets. He made whistles for them, and then he told them stories. Stay with us, Johnny, the children said. Stay here and live with us. But Johnny Appleseed would not stay. I have apple work to do, he said. I must plant apple trees so everyone may always have plenty of good apples to eat. For many, many years, Johnny Appleseed wandered through the lands where new homes were being built. He grew old and gray and tattered. "The trees I first planted are old too," he said, and he laughed happily when he saw children playing in their branches. On summer evenings, when the old man sat out under the stars, he smiled. "Seems as if I hear words in the lapping of the river and the sighing of the breeze," he whispered. "Seems as if they keep saying the same thing over and over again. Seems as if I hear them say, 'Thank you, thank you, from all the people yet to come, for all the apples yet to grow. Thank you, Johnny Appleseed.'" And that, boys and girls, is the story of Johnny Appleseed. And now stay tuned, and we'll be back with another story in just a moment. And now from the storybook of Pillow Time Tales, I'm going to read you the story of Mrs. Gray Squirrel and Tiger Cat. Mrs. Gray Squirrel and Tiger Cat. "Brr," said Mrs. Gray Squirrel as she put her head out of the door of her house in the old oak tree. "Jack Frost was certainly here last night, and I suppose now he will be here every day. I must begin today and get my house cleaning done." She went into her house, called Mr. Gray Squirrel, told the three little squirrels it was high time for them to be up, and set about getting breakfast. Of course, everyone in the squirrel family minded Mrs. Squirrel, so it wasn't long before Mr. Squirrel was ready for breakfast. And the three little squirrels, with their faces washed and fur smooth, were in their places at the table. "Now," said Mrs. Gray Squirrel when they had finished, "today I'm going to clean house. So you children go outdoors and don't dare bother me until dinner time. And you, Papa Squirrel, when you come home tonight, be sure to bring all the nuts you can carry. Winter will be here before we know it, and we want to be ready." Just as soon as the three little squirrels had helped put away the breakfast things, they ran out of the house to play in the trees. And Mrs. Squirrel went to work. Not 1 minute was wasted. Before noon, almost everything was in order, and Mrs. Squirrel sat down to rest a minute and to catch her breath. Tap, 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 she suddenly heard. "Well, that must be someone coming to call," said Mrs. Squirrel to herself, "and I really haven't time to talk to anyone. I'm not going to answer the door." Rap, 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 she heard again quickly, and then a rap, rap, rap again. "Now, who is that? I'll just take a peek." And very quietly she climbed up to the little hall window and looked out. And then she saw who was there. Mrs. Gray Squirrel was so frightened that she almost fell over backward. For there, right on her doorstep, was Mr. Tiger Cat, with his eyes big and very cross-looking, and his tail lashing back and forth. "Oh, what shall I do?" thought Mrs. Gray Squirrel. "He will come in here and eat me up, and then wait for the three little squirrels. Oh, I'll have to hide." So she crept softly downstairs and slipped into the deepest closet under the summer coats that she had just put away. She was just in time, too, for old Tiger Cat, tired of waiting, pushed open the door and walked right in. "Aha, no one at home," said he. "Well, I'll just shut this door and lie down here. Then when the squirrel family comes in, oh, I'll have a fine dinner. Oh, I'm a smart cat, I am." Well, Mrs. Gray Squirrel could hear all that he said, and she peeked out from her hiding place and saw him by the door. "I can't fight that old Tiger Cat," she thought, "for he's too big. I can't push him out of the door, for he'd see me and catch me. And I haven't a thing to hit him with. Oh dear, what shall I do?" And then she thought of something. "I know what I'll do. I'll take Father Squirrel's gray summer coat. It's the only thing I haven't put away yet, and it's right here. I'll put it over old Tiger Cat's head." She took the soft gray coat down from the hook, opened the door without the least sound, and crept up in back of Tiger Cat. Before he could blink his yellow eyes, she threw the gray coat over his head and tied the arms together. Well, if you could have seen old Tiger Cat, he didn't know what had happened to him. He jumped up and he danced around and he meowed, but he couldn't get the little gray coat off. Now Mrs. Squirrel was hopping around too, and just as soon as she could get near the door, she opened it. And just as soon as old Tiger Cat was near the door, she gave him a good hard push. Down, down, down he went to the ground. "There," said Mrs. Squirrel happily, "he's gone, and my babies are safe." Old Tiger Cat struck the ground with a hard bump, but he didn't care about the bump. He was so glad to be down on earth again. The little gray coat had slipped off on the way down and caught on a branch of the tree, so he never knew what had been over his eyes. And he never tried to find out, for old Tiger Cat stayed away from the old oak tree and the squirrel house ever after that. And so the squirrel family lived happily ever after. And that's the story of old Tiger Cat and Mrs. Gray Squirrel. And now, boys and girls, I have time enough to show you this book entitled Fall Colors. And inside it has some beautiful pages, and it says, "The autumn wind is fast and cold, blowing leaves of red and gold. They spin and swoop all through the air. Then they get tangled in your hair. Autumn leaves are everywhere. Autumn leaves crunch under feet. They cover all the lawns and streets. Look up. The trees have gifts for you. You're sure to find an acorn or two before the autumn days are through." Swirling through the skies are the smells of pumpkin pies and burning wood and future snows. All these scents tickle your nose. You'll smell them when the autumn winds blow. Leaves are whirling all around, making swishing, swishing sounds. Swing up and meet the leaves halfway. The greens of summer have gone away. The trees are nearly bare today. Rake the leaves into a pile. You're sure to see lots of smiles. Spin and tumble, dive and jump, then leap off the tree and jump. And that is the story of Fall Colors. And now, boys and girls, it's time for us to close our book of stories. We'll be back next Saturday morning. Till then, this is Eleanor Hawkins saying bye-bye for Telestory Time.